All right. Welcome to the next episode of Presidio Bitcoin Jam. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you, DK?
Good. I am away still this week, but I will be back next week. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys.
All right.
Actually, we're supposed to be back like early in the week. So I'll probably see you guys early in the week, but definitely in studio for Friday.
Very nice. Nice.
We'll have to get some biking on tap.
Indeed. I'm bringing my bike too.
And I think finally, DK, now that you're back, it's beyond time that the three of us do a little swim in the cold water, which I actually did this morning because I have stuff later this afternoon. So I'm feeling particularly relaxed this morning. By the way, cold water is the greatest elixir of life. Then we hit the sauna afterwards. And who knows, maybe if we're feeling spicy, we bring some of those little portable mics and just, hot air, PBJ hot air edition. I'm just saying, we've been talking about it for a year. It's time, gents.
But you're doing the cold water swimming with no wetsuit, right? Because you're a legit Dolphin Club member.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Steve and I are wetsuit guys. We're wetsuit.
Who would wear a wet? Oh no, for real?
Yeah.
No, I'm just playing. I will say I'm like, compared to a lot of people that do this stuff, I'm barely a swimmer. I mean, I do swim a little bit, but let's be real. Like, I love the cold shock, and I swim a little bit out there. But like, I'm a sauna maximalist. Like, when it comes to the sauna, my sauna game is very, very strong. I can stay in there as long as you want.
I need the wetsuit for buoyancy more than warmth. It helps my swimming.
But you'll get tarred and feathered if you carry a wetsuit into the Dolphin Club. Yeah. They will not be happy to see that.
That would be a little bit. That would be a little embarrassing. You don't want to.
Actually, I do. I'm definitely wearing a wetsuit then.
Okay.
Then I don't have to do the sauna with you guys.
Yeah, well, that's like wearing an Ethereum hat at BitDevs. Like, just
it is kind of that same.
Your mileage may vary, amigo.
All right.
Actually tickled DK. All right.
Yeah.
But by the way, one other thing I just wanted to mention from last week, I know we have a lot to chat about, but shout out to my dad, who's a regular listener of PBJ. It's kind of crazy because he listens to every episode. So if you're listening right now, I think he listens after on YouTube. But
hey, Dad.
Yeah, what's up? What's up, Dad?
Yeah.
Queb. Anyways, he was making some particular comments, and it's also crazy because he's interested in technology, but he's not. He would not be going deep down Bitcoin if it weren't for me doing this. However, he's gotten super into it. He's probably one of the most knowledgeable people about Bitcoin in the world at this point. I mean, if he's listening to every one of our podcasts, I can't imagine anything more informative.
Well, you need to get him commenting on the stream. Like
he
can live comment.
I'm in if he's live.
Come on, Dad.
I don't think he's live. I think he does it after. But I'll tell him about that. We'll see if we can get him set up for next week. But one of his biggest comments last week, the thing that he loved the most was, and I didn't see this the first time, so I had to go rewatch, and it truly was amazing. DK's Muppet faces.
Oh yeah. I was revisiting my Muppet faces in my mind. I was like, did I do that? Yeah,
you did. And they were fabulous. Like, as we were describing the scam that is the monetary system, central banking, stablecoins, we'll talk all about those scams more today. But I suggested there's that little Muppet meme of the guy that's like, hey man, you're not just making shit up out of thin air. And exactly, there it is. That's it. That's the money shot. DK knows exactly. Excellent. So that's
his go-to move now.
Yeah, exactly. From now on, I'm just gonna watch DK Muppet.
It's good. So do you guys have anything besides the agenda, or can I get into it?
Let's roll.
Go for it.
Okay. So there is, I think in the last hour, it's like breaking news, right? Is Spark announced stablecoins on Bitcoin. And I got to be honest, I think we've talked about L2s in different flavors and Spark in different flavors and stablecoins in different flavors. And I still don't have like a clear mind map of how they all hang together and what are the trade-offs and all that. And I think, Steve, you've done a lot of research and talking to people about this. So, and I think, did you make or share that the spreadsheet that outlines various L2s?
Yeah, there's like a table that compares, but we didn't start with the Spark and just speak to Spark, and then maybe we'll show that table in a little bit to compare.
Because Spark has several different businesses. I think there's like kind of there's like a bank kind of networking thing, kind of like effectively like a Swift for banking for kind of traditional banks. Then there's like a developer API, and there's UMA, and then a new naming service. So I don't feel like I have a clear way to understand or explain what the focus is. So maybe you can help clarify some
I think you meant Lightspark, the company, has different.
Yeah.
So Lightspark's company, they have several different products, different businesses. Spark is a open source technology, which we'll get into. But their announcement today, I think everyone already knew, that is following along with LightSpark and Spark technology, that it supports tokens, its token platform, and will support stablecoins. So that's not news. But the news that was announced this morning is that there's a specific stablecoin issuer that is live on Spark now, which is the USDB. It's the stablecoin from Kraken, Robinhood, Anchorage, and a few others, I think.
So do they have like a consortium that is launching that or issuing that as part of this? Or is that already existed before?
That already existed. Yeah, a number of companies not named Tether, Circle, and Coinbase didn't really like. I'm speculating, but I don't think like the power dynamics of Tether and USDC. So they issued a new stablecoin. PayPal also issued their own stablecoin, but this one, I think it's USDB. Is it? Yeah, USDB. It's Robinhood, Kraken, Anchorage, and there's a few others as well. I forget if Bit goes in there, but
interesting.
In any case, they announced that like a year ago. They meaning this consortium. But the announcement today is that specific stablecoin on Spark is live. Yeah. So we should test it out after the show or this weekend.
Yeah,
I think they're even giving away dollars. So if you want some free money,
won't say no to that.
But so that's a little more progress on the Spark network and from LightSpark.
And to be clear, like, because I know we've talked a lot about stablecoins and network effects in the past, this doesn't obviously preclude LightSpark if they wanted to issue Circle or Tether in the future. This could be just like a dry run, because my guess is, even though this is interesting, they've got Krakens and these guys in the mix. I don't know the numbers, but I would assume that they have very little volume before this. But who knows? Maybe this is like enough of a differentiator that the stablecoin can actually get some traction.
Yeah, I think USDP is a small player right now. Don't really know what their growth prospects are. I think it would take more than just being on Spark. I mean, I generally agree with your first comment that it's like, it's good to have something live on Spark. But no doubt LightSpark wants to get Tether and USDC and any issuer on Spark.
Right.
I would guess is their goal. But anyway,
it operates on like Solana and Tron and other places. Is that?
Yeah, I should presumably. I actually don't know offhand like every platform they're on, but since it was announced a year ago, I've assumed they're on something like that. Probably Solana, maybe Base, maybe soon. Tempo
or Google.
G
chain.
Well, Google. Well, GCUL.
Universal Ledger.
Yeah.
It doesn't do.
Neutral.
You don't need stablecoin, or I mean, like, you don't need a blockchain,
and you don't need to listen to the rest of our episode. You've already heard the conclusion right there.
We already talked about this last week.
You don't need stablecoins.
You can go listen to the end of last. I thought we summarized things nicely at the last, and I remain a GCUL bull out of all these stablecoin
maximals.
Well, I think players like Stripe and stuff can definitely carve out. It'll become very fragmented and messy.
Yeah,
and so it's not like I don't think it'll be winner take all.
Right,
but it'll be like super messy. So I think Stripe will carve out their niche, and many others will too. But I think the database solution by Google is a winning formula.
Yeah. Well, one question, and maybe this will be a good, as you think about setting us up for describing Spark. The reason I asked that question on if USDB perhaps will get some more traction now, because it's on Bitcoin or interoperable with Bitcoin and Lightning is, and I don't know the answer to this question, but if you can do trustless swaps between Bitcoin and this new stablecoin. I don't know the answer to that, but to me, that's always been one major value proposition is if I'm a Bitcoiner and let's say I'm a major Bitcoiner and I'm outside the US or I'm even outside the system, whatever way, can I get in and out of dollars without needing to have a centralized market maker between the two different chains?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the answer is yes.
Because that's a huge deal, I think.
Yeah, that's where offhand,
I mean, my understanding is that that's a part of what Shazan had to build to make Lava work, like being able to sort of take a stablecoin that comes from wherever it is and have some sort of interconnectivity awareness of what's happening on Bitcoin and vice versa in order to be able to resolve those DLCs. So I think there's at least some novel work toward that end.
I've never seen that published. I find Lava very opaque, so I don't really understand it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Theoretically,
should we go through Spark?
let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those unfamiliar with it, Spark itself is it's a protocol. It's an open source technology. It allows for I think anyone would consider it I think most people, when you get into debate about what is a layer 2, like the most strictest definition usually is that it has to have unilateral exit. And Spark does have unilateral exit. So I think most people consider Spark a layer 2. So in some ways it competes with Lightning, but just like every other layer, like more broadly, layer 2, Cashew, Fediment, Arc, all of them support Lightning. They all interoperate with Lightning. It's the glue that connects all these systems together. Spark does as well.
By unilateral exit, we mean from the layer 2 to the native layer 1.
Yeah. So
Okay.
if you hold money in a wallet that's based on Spark, and that means you're connected to one or more servers, like Spark servers, and if they just disappear, there's a mechanism for you to get your money back on chain. We'll get into that because it's comes with an asterisk next to it.
How much?
But that mechanism does exist, and most other systems don't have that. Like the BitVM stuff does not, Cashew does not, Fediment does not, and Liquid does not. Lightning, of course, does. Anyway, so
Lightning and Spark are the only ones that have unilateral exit.
Arc as well, which is still in R&D mode, but making progress as well. And so Spark can scale Bitcoin payments, but you can issue tokens on it. And thus we just talked about a stablecoin, so you can issue stablecoins on Spark as well. And then they're on Bitcoin. You don't need another blockchain to build a wallet that supports both Bitcoin and stablecoins. You could just use Spark. So I mentioned servers, right? So you might have a wallet on your phone, but then it connects to one or more servers. So let's talk a little bit about that. The world in the servers. There's 3 different names we're going to go through here. Vocabulary lesson. 1 is Spark entity, 2 is Spark operator, and 3 is Spark service provider. SESOSSP. Okay. So the SE, Spark entity, you can think of that as like the company or organization in charge of one of these Spark systems. There can be, just like with Cashew, Fediment, Arc, there can be many instances of this. So one instance, the Spark entity would be responsible for it and sort of dictate the governance of how it's set up. It could also determine how many Spark operators there are, because there can be one or more Spark operators within a Spark entity. Okay. So the Spark entity can decide there's only going to be one Spark operator. And if there is only one, presumably it's the same company as the Spark entity. But there can also be multiple. So
is the Spark entity, is that a legal differentiation that can that owns the different Spark operators, or is
it's just a different role? Okay. I mean, let's go through a concrete example. So Light Spark is the first Spark entity. They have announced, at least so far, 2 Spark operators. Light Spark is one of the Spark operators, and then it's Ethan Mark as a startup as the second one. I mean, I jokingly refer to as David and Son, but they probably don't like me saying that. But it's literally true. But his son has a startup. I think it's FlashNet.
Yeah, FlashNet.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So 2 different companies, FlashNet and LightSpark, are Spark operators within one Spark entity. So that, I mean,
But what is the actual Spark entity? Because like each of the operators is running a server. Is that correct?
Yeah, but the Spark entity's role is it's in charge. I mean, it determines the rules. Like for example, who determines how many operators there are?
Got it.
Who determines the onboarding process? Okay. It's a permission system. I mean, that part of it is a permission system.
Got it.
So
Okay.
like, what if I want to be a Spark operator on that? Like, I can't just like permissionlessly join.
I understand.
The Spark entity says, okay, here's your application, fill it out. Let's sign a partnership, and then you can join.
But to create a new, oh, go ahead.
No, please.
So to create a new Spark operator, you have to go be a part of a Spark entity. But to create a new Spark entity, do you need to, is that permissionless, or do you need to go to LightSpark to create that?
That is permissionless. It's permissionless with some caveats right now. So Spark is MIT licensed open source software, the client side and the server, although the SSP, which we haven't talked about yet, that is currently closed source, and there's no published specification for what that should look like. So if you were to build your own SSP, you'd have to like reverse engineer what that API looks like, so you could plug it in to the Spark. So the Spark operator server software is open source. The SSP is not, and there's no published spec. So there'd be a bit of reverse engineering, but there'd be nothing stopping. Like the three of us could create a Spark entity right now. Each of us could have our own companies and Spark operators. We could have 3 operators. We could stand it up, create a business. Wallets could be built on it. Stablecoins could be run through it. We could charge money, and it would literally be completely independent of LightSpark, and they'd have nothing to say about it. Yeah. That's possible.
This could be one of our offerings for our treasury company.
But practically speaking, one, we'd have to reverse engineer. I mean, there'd be a lot of engineering work for us to get that up and running.
Yeah.
And obviously LightSpark built the system so that their engineers understand the system well. And we'd have to learn.
Right. So before we jump in the Spark operator, I just want to make sure I understand the distinction between the service provider, the operator, and the entity. So the entity defines the rules. How sort of flexible is all the parameters you can change in there? As an example, and maybe an analogy would be something like the universes and Taproot assets. Is this the kind of thing where you could say on our Spark chain, you can only move dollars? You can only move this specific stable coin. Is that one of the potential parameters you consider? Or what are the parameters?
I think so. So one parameter is how many operators are there, and some considerations. Well, actually, let's go deeper in a second. So one is number of operators. 2 is what if any fees are charged by the operators. 3 is how many SSPs are there. 4 is like, what are the rules around all this? Like, who can be an SSP? Who can be, not only how many, but like who is allowed to be an SSP and an SO? And then probably like what assets are supported on that entity. And
can the entity, after it's up and running, retroactively make changes, or once it's set, that instance is set?
I think it could be changed at any point in time. Okay. And for the audience I don't work for LightSpark. I have studied it quite a bit. My team has looked at a lot of the code, so we understand it fairly well. We still have a lot of questions, but like everything I'm saying is like pretty confident, but I don't speak for the company or the technology.
Fair. Okay.
I'm still trying to get a little bit of a mental model of how to think about, like, presumably the company created entities, operators, and SSPs because they envision a certain structure or future and how that would work. Like, so, like you gave the example of what if the 3 of us were to make an entity and each become operators within that entity? It's like, why would we choose to each be operators in a single entity versus each create our own entity? I feel like there's like levels of abstraction that there's somebody at LightSpark who's imagining a certain structure or a certain use cases, and those aren't in my mind yet. Okay.
So another thing that's not been an important part of how does Spark work, how does it get the scaling impact that it has? It is based on a technology called state chains, which Ruben Thompson invented in 2018 or 2019. And when he on like a Medium post, and I remember when he posted it, I read it, and I liked state chains a lot. Back when Medium was actually used. I read a lot of your Medium posts too back then. But anyway, state chains I always felt was like a really good building block. It had a nice set of properties where it is trusted, but you get a lot better off-chain scaling than Lightning. You can basically lock up Bitcoin in a Bitcoin transaction, and then you can send that Bitcoin from, like, I can send it to Max can send it to DK off chain. And without a lot of the drawbacks to Lightning. But the big drawback to state chains is a level of trust. You need a server, a state chain like entity or operator, basically what the Spark operator is. And then if I send money to Max, so there's a unilateral exit. So Max would have a transaction that if the server goes away, he can still get his money back. But Max is trusting. There is one way to steal Max's money now. If I, the previous owner, collude with the server, we have key material that can be combined, and we can unilaterally exit.
The previous owner of what, of the Bitcoin?
Yeah. So if my wallet, if I have money and I pay you, if I then collude with the operator,
got it. Okay.
I can steal what you believe is your money.
You can double spend.
Now, if my keys are deleted or the operator's keys are deleted, then it's not possible to steal your money.
Got it.
So you are trusting. So the operator can say, hey, I've written the code to delete the keys. Upon transfer, those keys that were associated with me are deleted. So the operator can write that code, run that code, make that public statement, but you're trusting that they're actually doing that.
And there's not another like sort of nefarious backdoor. For example, maybe in the future I like have a camera or even in my contact lens and take a photo of the key, so it's not even on the computer.
You mean you as a rogue employee of that operator?
Sure, or the operator themselves, a rogue employee.
One, you're trusting the operator that they don't lie, cheat, steal. 2, you're trusting that no rogue employee does that. 3, you're trusting that like some external hacker like North Korea or something isn't getting into that system, changing the code to not delete the keys, and then be able to steal all the money that flows to that system after that point.
Right.
So that's what you're trusting. But you get really nice scaling properties for that trade-off. So that's state chains technology. That's how Spark works. Now, that's a preface to what you asked, David, which is like, why have all this complexity about multiple operators? Like, why not just have one? Why isn't an entity and operator the same thing and only have one operator? So a benefit to multiple operators is that if you have like 2 operators, both would have to cheat. Like both would have to change their code to not delete the keys in order to steal funds and collude with the previous owner.
So then it's like a federation.
It's
like the properties of Liquidit or Fedimin or some of these things.
Yep. And so you can do, like, I believe their current one is a 2 of 2.
Right.
If you wanted to do a threshold where, let's say you have 4 operators, then you would need to trust 2.
Okay.
But you won't. But then the nice thing then is, one of the operators doesn't have to sign each transaction, like if they have downtime or something. So you get the resilience of threshold, but your trust goes from 1 to 2. You have to trust 2. If it's 2 of 2 or 3 of 3, you only have to trust that at least one operator is honest.
And in theory, you could be that operator.
The end user.
Well, for most end users, that's not the case. But let's say you were a business and you're like, I don't want to trust other businesses. But if you're the business, if I'm, for example, Google and Stripe, right? And we're talking about permissionless or credibly neutral. If you say I'm one of the operators and therefore I trust that I'm not going to mess up, then I know that, my system is secure.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So that's like, and then also it helps the regulatory posture as well. Because Lightspark intends for their Spark entity to be no KYC, that it's, not an MSB. And I believe the argument is, well, they can't steal customer funds. Like, here's the code. We've developed the system. No one entity can steal the funds. And Lightspark itself, that company can't steal the funds unilaterally. And so they're not an MSB, and they don't need KYC. So I think it's an important part of the regulatory story as well. As is unilateral exit, because another thing is, like, even if we go away, we disappear, we turn the server off or whatever, we're told to turn the server off, customers can still get their money. So I think it's a pretty strong regulatory
one
position.
thing jumped in my head immediately, and I don't know why I didn't think about this before, but to your point, I mean, the big weakness is trusting that the key is not getting stolen somehow. What about just running the signers for the Spark using Lexi or OpenSecret in the enclave?
Yeah, I think
like it solves, or it didn't solve it entirely, but it's a huge jump.
Yeah, that is a potential roadmap thing to improve it further.
Yeah.
There's some technical challenges there, but I'm sure they can be overcome. And then you just improve the resilience even more, because then you get it to a point where like SGX has to be attacked, which actually there are known attacks on SGX.
SGX top fail.
So these systems can be broken, but it just raises the bar for attacking the system. So I think that's like a future direction for this technology too.
And you could have, for example, I mean, nothing's perfect, but you could have one of the signers using Nitro with AWS, one using SGX from Intel. Like you could
that would improve the resilience even more.
Yeah.
And just to understand the use case a little more clearly, I understand that Lightspark may be running an entity, presumably because they're kind of a new startup that's building the thing and maybe want to have a demo of it. But would you imagine that a typical entity would be like, would JP Morgan be an entity, or would it be like a new community banking type of emergent kind of community bank thing, the way we think about things like cashew mints and amphetamines? Like, is that sort of the use case, or is there some other type of entity to think about that would be a Spark entity?
I think, any financial institution, whether you're TradFi or FinTech or a new crypto Bitcoin company, this could appeal to you.
Anyone that's looking at stablecoins, or like Google, Stripe, anyone that's thinking about getting in this game could do this, or even be in a consortium, right? Instead of like the Google Credibly Neutral or Tempo with like, oh, we've got Visa again, all this, you could actually, each of those players could be a signer.
So would this be like an alternative, like the GCUL, the Google Cloud, whatever ledger thing? Is that, sorry, I forget the Universal Ledger. Yeah. Is that like an alternative approach to a very similar problem, or do they work together in some way? Or,
well, I think, again, so Spark, you can use it for Bitcoin payments or stablecoins or any token. So Google Cloud has no Bitcoin payment solution. Also, Google Cloud Universal Ledger, has or at least they stated that they have like a full compliance solution. So I think they're
more
going
on the KYC side of things.
It's more on the KYC side. Whereas and Lightspark also has compliant solutions as well. That's more the UMA and their original first product they introduced. Whereas Spark technology is not that.
So I think about two critical differences in my mind. One, all of the blockchains are just, again, as we've said many times last week, if you want to hear the rant, go on there, or just decentralization theater. The nice thing here is, in theory, you can actually prove, if we have 12 institutions that are part of a consortium, you can prove if it's a whatever 8 of 12 SIG or whatever the threshold is, that like you actually need 8 of those 12 institutions to sign it to move it. So that's one really nice thing, is you can get real decentralization, not just the theater. And then the second piece is it interconnects with, this is what we've talked about, Lightning Network and Bitcoin, the internet of value, versus each of these being separate intranets and all of them having to go and like, okay, I need a plugin so that I'm compliant with Stripe Chain, Google Chain. That's the way I see it.
And let's say, I'm just going to make up a hypothetical. to see if it fits. Let's say that Matt and I have been vibe coding a lot of things, and I think we've been drawn to games a lot. Let's say we were to set up a Bitcoin arcade. Would that be the type of thing that might be an entity? Is that like a kind of a new startup that uses Bitcoin in a new way? Is that the entity level, and then we would also be our own operator, or we would create other operators? Or I'm trying to understand how the patterns map.
I think if you're building an application, you don't create I think you just create an app. You use other entities.
Okay.
I think you need to be. I mean, it would be bad for decentralization if Spark becomes very popular and there's only one entity like LightSpark. That would give them tremendous power. So the more the better for decentralization. But just realistically, I think the more would be like Tether and Coinbase and Block and Stripe and Google and like companies like that, and banks could become entities. I don't think like you're going to vibe code an app and become an entity. Like it's a big undertaking, right? I mean, so
it's similar to like, the early days with Lightning Network, or even like email and servers. Like it's a pain in the ass to run a server. And I assume,
and you also you either need to. We haven't talked about SSPs yet, but you either have to provide liquidity or find partners that will. So, like in the LightSpark SE, they hold the role of the SE. It's their SE. They are one of the two operators, and they're an SSP. An SSP, Spark Service Provider, you can think of it as quite similar to LSP, Lightning Service Provider, or an ASP, Arc Service Provider, or both Cashew and Fedimint have Lightning gateways. All of these servers, the purpose is connect to the Lightning Network and then provide, in some of those cases, provide liquidity to wallets. In the case of Arc, Lightning, and Spark, there needs to be liquidity for the wallets, and that's so within the Spark universe, there's an SSP, and one entity can have one or more SSPs. You're not locked to one. You need at least one, but there can be multiple, and there's a million different combinations. Like you could literally have like the entity doesn't have to be an SSP. So you could be an entity, you could have like 4 operators, 4 different companies or whatever, and then like none of them even need to be the SSPs. That could be other SSPs. And as the entity, you could set up the SSPs. They could be permissionless, or you could have an application process where you have to sign a business agreement to be an SSP within the entity. Those are the types of, getting back to what the rules are for an SE. The SE can decide that.
So explain, I don't fully understand. So what exactly is the SSP doing? Is their primary goal to connect to the Lightning Network and manage Bitcoin and Lightning Network liquidity? And
it's a couple things. One, the way Spark, another part of this, so I mentioned Spark is based on state chains. Another building block within Spark are payment trees.
Right.
So one of the challenges with Lightning for individuals is that you need at least one Lightning channel per user. And that creates a scaling constraint. With Spark, you do not open up a channel per user. Instead, they use these state coins from state chains, and a state coin can be a certain amount of Bitcoin, and then they divide that amount up into small denominations that are reflected as leaves on a tree. And the tree can be large. Like it can be like a 12-level deep tree. You can have dozens, hundreds, thousands of leaves. There's trade-offs to what you get with a bigger tree versus a smaller tree, and all the different configurations of a tree. But that's a very important building block to understand with Spark. So there needs to be a liquidity provider, at least one, that's responsible for that tree that can like swap leaves with wallets.
So, okay, interesting. 2 questions. One, is it arbitrary, the denominations of what can fit on the tree?
That's another thing that the Spark entity can determine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And two, like maybe you can give us like a concrete example. So I don't understand it. Like, what is the liquidity provider doing with this leaf? So like if they're swapping out with the wallet, like what does that look like?
Oh, well, the other part is like connecting to Lightning. Like,
Exactly. Okay.
so like if I have a Spark wallet and I want to pay David, but he's using like Cash App or he's using a Cashew wallet or whatever. He's using like, how do I pay him?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can scan a Lightning invoice and then one or more leaves of the Spark tree, which I own as part of my wallet, would then be atomically swapped for Bitcoin and Lightning to pay David. Very much like how Cashew and Fedimint work, right?
Interesting.
Like if you have a Cashew wallet and you need to pay someone, even if they're using Cashew, but they're on a different mint, it has to be swapped into Bitcoin, sent over Lightning, and then swap back into IOU tokens.
Now, how small can you denominate this? Because as an example, let's just say I get whatever, $10, whatever the denomination on the tree, I have a $10 leaf, but I make a 1 penny payment, a micropayment. How would that, can you do that first of all? And how would that work?
Yeah, it's similar trade-offs as like eCash. Like eCash too, eCash is denominated and you have to make you have to determine like how small the denominations are. And it's a privacy versus data size trade-off with eCash. Like with eCash, from a privacy standpoint, ideally the denomination size is 1 sat.
Well, I think we're gonna go much smaller than that. I think actually it's one of the things.
But that's not practical though. Like if I send you a payment, it might be like terabytes in size.
Totally,
like,
but I mean, one of the things I love about eCash, and maybe this can work as well, is if we're doing for the agents, right? I think 1 sat. If I actually had this conversation with our new AI member who I won't necessarily dox, but
sorry. You can have like a 1 sat or even sub, but for perfect privacy, I meant like that's the only denomination you have for perfect privacy.
Oh,
so if I sent you like 1 million sats, it would be 1 million tokens. That's why it doesn't scale well.
Interesting.
So, but that's the best for privacy, but you got to be real. So usually you do like, powers of 2. So your denominations would be 1, 2, 4, 8, 16.
Okay.
So if I send you 20, then that would be a 16 token and a 4 token.
So,
and that applies to both eCash systems and to tree-based systems.
So again, just to use a very concrete example, I have a $10 leaf. I want to send a penny. How would that work if the denominations are much larger?
Well, your $10, it might. Let's get back to Spark. So a tree within Spark, you might have a leaf that is of value worth $10 of Bitcoin. So then you just have 1 leaf, or maybe it's comprised of multiple leaves, like $8, and they're literally UTXOs.
Yeah, okay.
They're literally Bitcoin each leaf in a Spark tree is a Bitcoin transaction.
Okay, that makes sense now.
So like you could have an $8 one and a $2 one.
Got it.
Right. And then then you can start understanding unilateral exit a little bit better.
Yeah.
If I have in this hypothetical example, I have a $10 balance and I have an $8 and a $2 leaf. Each of those is a Bitcoin transaction in this tree.
Got it.
And if I want to unilaterally exit, I have to broadcast both. And not only do I have to broadcast each of those, I have to broadcast every transaction on my portion of the tree all the way to the root of the tree.
So just to be clear on this, because so I understand it much better with UTXOs. So if I have 1 UTXO, I make a payment, I get now whatever my change address is my new UTXO that I'm now custodying. Is that the way this would work too? So in that $10 1 penny example, and that's an extreme example, but would I then end up with 2 new leaves, or not? Only one of the leaves is mine, but does it create?
Well,
two
if you unilaterally exit, you're exiting the Spark system, so
right?
Then you just have Bitcoin on chain.
And I would only have to. So, but what happens between A and Z before I want to exit the chain? If I do a whole bunch of payments between them, do I have to save each of those UTXOs as leaves and publish? Certainly not. Like there's probably one.
Well, also they're not really. Because there's 1 UTXO for the entire state coin. The state coin is then split up into many leaves in a tree. Like think of a big tree with hundreds of leaves.
Is it similar to
of that represents 1 UTXO?
Similar to a Merkle tree?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So all of that is just this representation off chain that Bitcoin doesn't know anything about.
Right.
That is representing a distribution of value across that one UTXO.
Okay.
That's where you're getting the scaling factor.
Yep.
So you can do like, I mean, it depends on the depth and size of the tree, but you can do like thousands of payments before that tree expires and is no longer can be used. We can get into that as well if we want, why that is. But it's tied to the unilateral exit part. But yeah, that's where you're getting like nice scaling properties by sharing that UTXO across all these payments.
Okay, so two questions in that. So let's say before I unilaterally exit, I'm doing it, whatever, 1,000 payments. How is that updated in the tree? Like, or how, I guess there's two questions. One, whenever I do want to unilaterally exit, if the operator or the entity is the one that has the UTXO, how do I, as an individual user, get unilateral exit? Does the entire tree have to close out and go back to the chain, or is there a way for me individually?
For the unilateral exit?
Yeah. Like, does that close it for everyone?
If you're, let's say you keep it relatively simple, only one leaf you want to exit with, you sort of follow that up the tree to the root, and all of those that branch basically, and all the associated transactions, those all need to be broadcast.
Got it.
And
So it's just a portion. It's a portion of it's only a portion of the tree.
Right. But let's say I'm now intermingled with a whole bunch of other users in the tree. Who's paying for that? And do they get exited from their leaves as well that were mixed up with my leaves, or how does that work?
They would, and I don't know the answer to, like, I'm guessing the SSP would swap leaves for them. I actually don't know the answer to that.
Got it.
Sorry, David, what did you ask?
I'm just still trying to understand. Do I have like a private key that lets me sign transactions? If I want to broadcast all of these things, I guess it kind of overlaps with what Max was just asking. But if I would guess that this tree has some mix of my stuff and other people's stuff if I've used it effectively for payments. And so I'm just wondering, how do I broadcast all of that, and how does that affect other people?
Well, maybe since it's pretty complicated, why don't we stick to the happy path versus the unilateral exit's very complicated. They don't even fully have it solved yet. So let's
wait a second. That sounds like a red flag.
Well, I mean, we can.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's red. I mean, software's complicated.
Yeah, of course.
They are.
I'm mostly kidding. Yeah.
Making progress towards that, but but also, we also should. Unilateral exit is not practical for the majority of users. It's more, in my opinion, it's more of a regulatory position than a user benefit. But we can talk about that later if you want. But let's talk about how does it work in the happy path case. So, like, there might be a tree with a bunch of leaves, and each of the three of us have our own wallets, and some of our coins could be in tree 1, some of our coins are in tree 2. They're all sort of mingled together. Let's say I make a payment to someone, and of value 13. So let's say it's like powers of 2. So I need a coin of 8, 4, and 1. And let's say I have that in my wallet. If I don't, then you can do a swap with the server to get the appropriate change. But let's say I have 8, 4, and 1. Great. That's what I need for my payment. So we take those 3 leaves, and then I make my payment. If it's going to someone else with that has a wallet on the same Spark entity, then I think then they would just be assigned 1 or more leaves to receive that value. Again, so the server needs to manage that. Whether the SSP does that by itself or does it in conjunction with Spark operators is an unknown to me still. But definitely the SSP would have to be involved, and maybe they can do it all by themselves. And then if you are making a payment outside of that Spark entity, but to some other Spark entity or to any other system, then it does what I said earlier, which is swaps it to Lightning and then makes the payment that way. So
so it sounds like, just to be clear, and I know we have to go a little bit more in the details on this, but the liquidity provider, a lot of what they're doing is kind of like matching together different pre-denominated notes so that everyone can get paid.
Yeah, it's very much, that's how eCash works too.
Right.
So it's, I mean, eCash doesn't use a tree, but eCash has all these denominations as well and has to manage it.
It's much easier in eCash though, right?
It is easier in eCash because it's not managing these complicated trees.
Right.
You know, but of course,
Trade-offs.
Yeah. eCash, like all the money can be stolen at any point in time by the mint, right? Yeah. So
there is a question I just wanted to raise from Austin, and this is kind of reflects something I was asking. I think Austin was around, but he's asking, what's the motivation to become an entity? I still think having more grounding in what an entity looks like and why people choose to run entities could help, because then it also helps understand why people choose to be operators on an entity versus create a new entity, and how do SSPs fit into that. Is it basically kind of like a new type of banking institution?
Yeah.
And so they would hope to collect
your motivation.
fees.
Yeah. You want to make money.
Via fees. You can presumably make money via some sort of fees or loans or something like that.
The fee structure. So I'll start by stating LightSpark's published fee structure, which is the fees for the Spark operators and like the Spark entity itself. It is currently free, and they say in the future will be a small flat fee. That's what they say. But it could be anything. Meaning it could be a flat fee, it could be a percentage, it could be whatever model the entity wants to do. There's a second fee though, which is the Lightning payment. Actually, sorry, there's three components to payments on the system. One is Spark itself. Then there's the SSP, which is doing these swaps from the Spark world to the Lightning world to make a payment. And then the third is over the Lightning network itself. All the nodes in the Lightning network along that route charge their fee. Mm-hmm. So there's like three components to the fee. Mm-hmm. So why become a entity? It's because you want to have lots, a billion users using all kinds of wallets that are connected to your entity. You're in charge, so you can choose to just be the only operator, or you can choose just two operators. You can choose 80-20. Like, let's say it's my entity. And then David, you're like, oh, that was a really good idea, Steve. And you seem to have a lot of traction and have a lot of business. I'd like to be part of that. And I'd be like, yeah, I do want a second operator because I want a better regulatory position. Yeah, exactly. And I want all my customers to believe I'm not going to rug them. So by having this independent company join as an operator, great, I get some benefit. But because I already developed a good business here, I'll only give you 20% cut, right? So, right. And then also I get to decide what the fees are. I can change them. I can change them whenever I want. I can switch from free to small flat fee to large flat fee to percentage or whatever, and then give you a 20% cut.
And the good business here that you're, hypothetically creating is that you have effectively a new type of bank, and you have a lot of customers who are using your banking services with a wallet that is proprietary to your entity. Is that true?
No, this would be like, there could be any wallet could use this.
So,
like for example, what we know, like facts today, like LightSpark's the only entity that I'm aware of, and Wallet of Satoshi is using it. And is it Blitz or Blixt, and there's so many different wallets. There's several different wallets that are using this entity, so it's not proprietary. Again, it's whatever the entity wants to do. An entity could make it so that no one can use their system except their own wallet. You could do that. But that's not how LightSpark's entity works. They're open for business. They want as many wallets as possible because they want as many payments as possible because they'll make more money.
If I had to zoom out at the 10,000 foot view level, my take on all of this is Bitcoin is money, real money for the world, and we have some decentralized payment infrastructure, but the vast majority of people are not going to use that payment infrastructure themselves because it's expensive and hard to run servers. Therefore, banks are going to exist. And this was an early point. I forget if it was Satoshi or Hal Finney. It was just like, there's going to be banks. Now, how are those banks going to work? Well, there's a whole wide spectrum, right? And this is effectively, to your question, like, why would you run an entity? Depending on your sort of cynical or less cynical view. The cynical view would be because you want to rent sync from customers you already have. That's what Stripe is doing with Tempo. That's what, Google is doing with GCUL or whatever it is. The less cynical view would be because you're competing in a free market and your bank can offer better services, whether that's more trust, more transparency, better payment services, cheaper costs because you're better connected. But there's a whole spectrum. Now, why would someone run one of these Spark entities versus doing a totally centralized blockchain like Google or Stripe versus an eCash mint? Well, they have different trade-offs. And a lot of it, if I put on my cynical hat again, is because you want regulatory cover. So you have other people as signers in there because that gets you out of the, or if I have my less cynical hat, I actually want to be part of a decentralized consortium and it's more like Visa and we're all actually sharing and we're all providing value and it's real. If I'm more cynical, then it's just a slightly different version of theater with like slightly less, theatrics. And then there's the third option, which is, I want to, and one day when we get the mints, if we talk about eCash mints, whatever, it's like, I'm just going to run my own. I'm going to provide my, my own services and you can take it or leave it and, easily transfer. But it's just, as I see it, it's like just looking at what's the new tech stack for banks.
We're frying people's brains. So
yes,
Scott, if there's anything admittedly it's complicated. If there's anything we've said though that you need clarification, feel free to shout out.
My brain is a little fried too. I don't know that I fully understand. I understand, like in the example that you gave, Steve, you said that you are running this business and it's a really good business, and you sort of offer that I could join in and be an operator on your business. I'm trying to understand, just because I think it'll help clarify what the layers of this technology, what the entity, what function it serves, what it optimizes for, is what makes that a good business. You have a bunch of fees. If I join as an operator, am I sharing in those fees? What gets you lots of fees? I assume you have a lot of wallets or value deployed or payments happening. So I'm just trying to get a better sense of just what's going on here.
Yeah. I mean, that part's pretty simple to understand. I think you want payments to increase. So you need wallets and you need users. So let's say you have users, wallets, and payments happening. Those payments flow through one or more entities, right? So if you're an entity that has a lot of payments flowing through it, you can make money. That seems pretty straightforward to me. Right. And then but then it begs the question, well, okay, why don't I just want to take all that money, capture all that money? Why do I want to have multiple operators? That gets into the system. Well, a big value proposition with Spark, intended value proposition, is no KYC, right? And so if you take that position, you need to be able to defend that legally and regulatory bodies. And it's a stronger position if it's a federation versus one entity. And so that is and also even like customers too. Because if you have two operators, then you can tell customers, hey, I cannot unilaterally cheat you. There has to be collusion among multiple parties to steal your money, right? So it could be a marketing benefit to your customers. It definitely creates a stronger regulatory position. That's why you'd have multiple operators.
And do you get most of that value by bringing in one new operator, or is it much, much better to have 1,000 operators?
That's a question for our Bitcoin economists that we found one day.
Well, more like your lawyers, right? I mean, so like, I'm not a lawyer, but I think going from 1 to 2 is the majority of the value regulatory wise. But the more the merrier. Also, economics. So another reason, Max pointed out, another reason you'd want to join as an operator. Like, let's say you're a big financial. Let's say you're a financial institution with a wallet. Or let's just say you have a wallet, and you don't want to stand up your own entity. It's just too much. It's too much. It's not really where you want your business to be, and it's too much overhead. So you could join someone else's entity, or use someone else's entity. But you might want to join as an operator for the reason Max said earlier, which is if you're an operator, then and as long as you have your shit together and your servers, your infrastructure is not attacked, then you can be assured that the overall system won't be either. So it gives you confidence, gives you more control to make sure your customers are safe from theft. of course you can still be attacked, but at least you're in charge of your own IT department. You have no idea at these other companies. So
I think you mentioned
that's the reason you'd want to become an operator. And then as far as the economics, like if you had an entity, I was like a week ago, I was thinking that as an entity, you'd want to minimize the number of operators because you don't want to split the fees up as much. But again, you make the rules. So it could be like, okay, I get 80%. The second operator comes in gets 19%, and then the next 100 that join, because they just their value proposition and they just want to like have this trust. Well, you get like 0.01% or something.
And okay, so two things there. One, I think that's a really important point, because like if you zoom out again, it's not just the banks. I'll reframe that. The banks and the payment networks are both under attack. And what I'm increasingly seeing very clearly now is everyone's coming for Visa. And that's what Stripe is trying to do with their consortium. That's what Spark is doing here. And there's going to be network effects. There's probably going to be winner take most. Maybe that is a little bit less interoperable with Bitcoin Lightning World. That's an interesting question. But to your point, to your point, saying to my earlier point, that's a big differentiator that I don't think a lot of these companies understand yet. Because if you're going and working with Stripe on Tempo, you're basically giving Stripe the keys to the kingdom, is my understanding, if it's a centralized blockchain or database. But in this world, this gets at what Google is saying with credibly neutral so much better. Like every bank, if you're invited to join the consortium, you should want to do this, because now you don't have to have that trust, whether or not the economics are there. I think that's a really important point.
An additional, I think it's an important point, but another complication with having lots of operators. If you want the trust model where you only need one honest operator, then it has to be an N of N federation, meaning every payment that is made on the system by any wallet, every operator has to sign and be part of that. So if you had 100 financial institutions as part of one entity, all 100 of their servers and operations have 24/7 uptime. If one of 100 goes down, the whole system fails.
That's a big point.
It's a big point, right? So then you can get into threshold federation, but then you no longer have the you only need one honest operator. You'd need more. It depends on what your threshold is.
Right. I think it's also worth just thinking through some of the incentives of this. So, if there's one giant Spark that ends up winning, or as like whatever, as a Pareto distribution, you definitely want to be one of those signers and get some of that sweet economics. So it's gonna be very interesting to see. Lightspark is obviously very well positioned for that, which is great. I'm an investor in Lightspark, exciting. But what's gonna be interesting to see on two fronts: one, them competing with Stripe, as Stripe is going for their much more permissioned. I'll be very curious to see, like if the old world institutions end up going more this route, where they get better security and better economics, or if Stripe can whatever kind of get them there first.
Well, also when we analyze this and discuss it, we got to, I think, largely separate stablecoins or Bitcoin payments, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking stablecoins.
Right. I just wanted to point that out.
But one other critically important question, though, because as I think about where this could go, all of these are very permission with the entity. A question I have is, could you do an entity where the rules, like the entity itself is a federation and the rules are set in stone? So what I mean by that is, in this world, my understanding is, if Lightspark or Stripe or whoever starts the entity and there's the rules there of like, I don't know, I guess the signature threshold can't be changed, or maybe that rule can be changed. I don't know. But is there a way that you could have, for example, 5 anonymous or pseudonymous actors on the internet come together and say, we're going to operate an entity together. We're each going to be operators, and, you can't retroactively change. You need 3 of us, 5 to sign. That's the rule forever.
I don't see how you can guarantee that it's not going to change.
Interesting. I need to think more about that.
I mean,
can we
you just update software on a server, right?
Well, to be clear, with the Fediment, you could guarantee that, right?
I don't see how. I don't see how you can possibly guarantee that it won't change. You could maybe make make it so that the wallets know that there's a change. Like if you had verifiable computing.
Yeah.
So if you do make a server change, then the client could say like, oh, that's changed.
I guess what I'm saying is like, if you have a threshold, right, where you say, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding this, like I need in order to, well, yeah, I guess you already have the unilateral exit, because I was going to say, like, if you wanted to say guaranteed the rules in the future won't change, I guess no one would be able to take the Bitcoin out of the system and run without the threshold signature that was set. That's true for all of these scenarios.
Yeah. So I think there'd be like for all the coins that, like if you do a policy change, maybe all the existing coins are committed to the old policy.
Got it. Okay.
But once swapped to new coins, it would be the new policy.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think you gave a specific example. The wallet of Satoshi is working with LightSpark. Is there capacity as an operator on LightSpark's entity?
I think they're just using it.
No, they're a wallet that uses Spark and LightSpark's entity.
That would be like
again, the only operators I'm aware of is Flashnet and LightSpark. I'm only aware of one entity and two operators in that entity.
So the way an entity gets kind of market position in this ecosystem is by having a lot of payments flow through them, right?
Yeah, I feel like I'm not communicating well. To me, the entity part's very straightforward. You're a business that wants to make money. It's your payments business.
You're a bank, or a payments
business. And then you run the Spark software as an operator. You bring on at least one other operator, so you have a better regulatory position, and that's why you do it. And then you want lots of wallets, lots of users, lots of payments.
And to be clear, that
your job, I get that people like to make money. That's not the open question. The open question is how. Like, do you develop and nurture an ecosystem of wallets that depend on you or that route through you somehow?
Yes, you want as many wallets to use you as possible. You want as many users as possible, as many payments as possible, and then you charge a fee.
And to be clear, you could charge a fee. I'd see it at least two places. Maybe there's more.
Well,
one is when you're
three, right? I mean, I already mentioned three.
So each of the three players could charge a fee.
Yeah.
So to be clear, because I was thinking you make money off of market making with the Lightning Network. You make money on being the liquidity provider and swapping these like tree leaves around. But you could, in theory, also just like, again, kind of rent seek and just say, hey, I'm just going to make 20% of everything because it's my customers. And I create the entity. Is that fair?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think if you're the entity, you would want more than 20%.
Well, yes. Okay. But you,
again. So let's say there's one entity, two operators, and then I think, and the entity, the operator that is the entity would take an 80% cut. The other operator gets 20%. That's for the Spark fee.
Right.
Then there's SSPs as well. Okay. And so if you're and like we can give a concrete case. LightSpark is both. They're all three: the SE, the SO, and the SSP.
Right. So
they can also make money, and they publish their figures for their SSP. They charge 15 basis points on any amount coming into the system, and 25 basis points for any amount going out of the system.
Cool, that makes sense.
They also run Lightning nodes,
so they make money on that too.
Yeah, so they'll make money in all three components.
So to be clear, what I'm getting at though, in both of those cases, and again, this is a little bit of my cynical hat for anyone doing this, but that's a service fee. I provide a service. My service is I'm providing liquidity, or I'm like providing the gateway to the broader internet, right? So like I'm providing a service and you're paying me for that service, and there's a free market competing, and that drives the cost down. If I'm the entity owner, when I said the 20%, I was thinking, and whatever, but maybe it's going to be more egregious, 80%. What I'm saying there is I'm rent seeking. Like I'm literally just saying, I'm not going to provide any service besides bringing my customers and just like brand.
Yep.
I guess I have to sign.
I don't understand. Like 20% or 80% is egregious. Like that's 20 or 80% of what. The what is what can, but it's clearly rent seeking.
Yeah. But this is my point, is eventually you could outcompete that. So like again, this is the whole beauty of, I guess, open source software and where I see things trending. In the early days, yes, the Stripes or whatever of the world will quote unquote rent sync by just like, hey, I already have my customers plug into me. what I'm saying is you could, in the future, you could have a pseudonymous group of banker, like people that come together, and it's like our fees are radically lower because the only place we're taking a fee is on the liquidity services, which is that's a service.
Being synonymous seems orthogonal to that.
Sure.
Like you could have Coinbase and River and Block create an entity to compete, and they charge no fees.
Yes.
Other
than the liquidity fees that are necessary. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think this, it's an unfortunate outcome if there's only one Spark entity, or, Spark becomes a really popular technology. Lots of wallets use it, lots of payments, lots of users, and there's only one entity. That's not a healthy outcome, for at least from the Bitcoin side. That's why I think my own opinion on this might vary with stablecoins versus Bitcoin. I mean, my view on this, stablecoins wise, I'd love to see Spark, and specifically Light Spark, do really well here versus like Tempo and Arc and Base and all these other,
for sure,
Tron and stuff like that. Just like Taproot Assets as well from Lightning Labs. Like, it would be nice to see them succeed. From a Bitcoin standpoint, I'm very excited about what Spark can, how it improves the user experience. And so hopefully it helps usher in more wallets. And how much time we should talk a little bit about that user experience part as well.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the potential that Spark can have on the user experience for Bitcoin wallets. I would be very scared though of a world where there's only one entity, then like Lightspark becomes the Visa of Bitcoin payments, and that's a very unhealthy outcome for Bitcoin. So it's far healthier if we have many Spark entities, and also other technologies like Lightning, Arc, Cashew, Fediment, some subset of them succeeding as well. Each of these systems has trade-offs. We're gonna maybe show a table today to show those trade-offs. Maybe we'll have to do it in a new episode, or a future episode, because we only talked about Spark today. But each of these systems has trade-offs. There's no silver bullet. Spark is not perfect. Like I said, there's trust, and also the unilateral exit is extremely expensive. So hopefully we see different use cases, different user bases use these different systems, and it's more distributed than just one entity controlling everything.
I think it might also help to understand the dynamics of the ecosystem, or imagine how this ecosystem might emerge. If we were to, you mentioned Wallet of Satoshi. Does Wallet of Satoshi, my understanding the history, and you can correct if this is wrong, but they were available in US app stores, and then they kind of withdrew from US app stores because they were concerned about a regulatory issue. I think the thing that hit Phoenix, they were worried about kind of a similar thing hitting them. And so they withdrew, and presumably with this Spark thing, that gives them a little more regulatory cover or clarity that enables them to operate more freely. So I wonder if we can, just to sort of understand the ecosystem better, why does Wallet of Satoshi choose to operate with this Spark entity, or like what would cause them to choose another one?
Well, so Wallet of Satoshi and Phoenix were like very different.
Okay.
It's true that events at the same time led each of them to exit the US in a similar time frame. But Wallet of Satoshi was a custodial Lightning wallet.
They were literally just YOLO.
They held like hundreds of millions or billions of customer money, and they weren't a licensed business. So that was very, very regulatory risky. Phoenix is self-custody. So it's just two completely different scenarios. But even they were worried about regulatory, because we just saw people get convicted who were running self-custodial services.
And not that we need to go all down the rabbit hole, but even there's some gray area, right? It's like if they automatically hook up to your LSP for the Phoenix thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance, but there's definitely not nuance between custodial and I mean, Wallet of Satoshi was like out and out
just illegal,
right?
Custodial. I was going to say custodial.
Custodial, sure.
So now getting to your question, David. Why are they motivated to switch to Spark? Well, two reasons. One, it's not clearly custodial. It's there's an online debate about what to call the Spark system, because Light Spark and Wallet of Satoshi market it as fully self-custody, and that's a big stretch. It's definitely a trusted system, but it's certainly not the same as a custodial system as well. It's somewhere in between. So someone coined the term Trustodial.
Yeah, and there's similar debates on all of these things. Like and this is a challenge, right? And like hopefully this is something you don't really have to explain to end users, because it's all like, I mean, we're frying people's brains, including our own right here. Same thing with Cashew. It's like, well, if you have a mint, well, yes, you custody the IOU, but it's not really self-custody either.
But Cashew, like
that's even
one
more
person
custodial.
can steal everyone's money in one moment in time. So it's very
It's a
different. Spark is definitely better in that respect. Than
It's more like
Cashew.
Fediment than Cashew.
Yeah, and
Potentially even better.
It's pretty similar to Fediment, trust model.
Yeah.
But but in any case, it's I mean, the number one reason is Wallet of Satoshi just outsources their regulatory risk to Lightspark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why, as a wallet developer, if you're worried about getting in trouble, it's like, oh great, they're going to take the risk.
So is that sort of like what we would look at as the emerging ecosystem is going to be people who want to build wallet experiences, but don't want to sort of.
And that actually helps answer too. Like
risk.
if you vibe code some app, you don't want to become like, you don't want to become an entity because you don't want to go to prison, right?
Yeah.
So if you're worried about going to prison or getting fined or getting in trouble with the government because you're running a MSB, or the government claims that you are, even if even if you don't believe it is, that's why you don't do it. So that's why obviously app developers aren't going to just like nonchalantly launch an entity. You have to be quite serious about.
It's more like a neobank. You're sort of in the business of trying to cultivate and nurture a bunch of liquidity and payments through you.
It is a bank. It's just a different form.
Yeah.
So Austin says, on the plus side, if Spark becomes like Visa, they're running open source software that then allows an upstart competitor to compete while also being interoperable.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I mean, so yes, Spark open source technology, as we said earlier, others can fire up their own entity and compete. And it's interoperable, but there's still business network effects here. So it's you can still project a future where one company would dominate.
But to his point, I mean, it's still, even though that's true, it's still like infinitely better than the status quo.
Yeah.
Where like, at least you're still interoperable with Lightning.
Let's fast forward to that future. So let's say like Lightspark dominates and all the wallets use it, all the users, and then they do what any company would do in that position, rent seek and increase their prices and make more money.
Right.
And then, so it kind of depends on the dynamics of it. Like if there's like 50 different wallets globally, each with similar size, no one, then who has the power? Like Lightspark has all the power. But if Wallet of Satoshi is like 90% of the payments, then they have more power. Like Wallet of Satoshi would then just start their own entity, right? So that's another thing too. Like a wallet might, it doesn't really make sense as a wallet to become an entity out of the gate. Like, but once you become popular and have a big business, then you just cut out whoever your entity is and just start your own entity.
Which is what Stripe is doing with Visa right now.
Yeah. So I think a realistic competitor would be the popular wallets would become their own entity, or they'd join forces. Even though they're competitors, they join forces to cut out this other middleman. So I think that's what we could expect to see happen there.
Yeah, Austin has a really insightful comment. Motivation to become an entity, wants to earn money and wants to go to jail. Noted.
Well, I mean that's why the system is designed as it is, to avoid being considered an MSB.
We're still in the transitory phase. The sovereign individual or the group sovereign individual is not played out yet. And in this transition phase for the next couple decades, regulatory as a service is important.
And sort of I think we've sort of touched on this, can be around Bitcoin payments, could be around stablecoin payments. I think a lot of our like Wallet of Satoshi type discussions are more around Bitcoin Lightning payments. How do stablecoins fit in? It's an asset that we mentioned, USDB, can be issued on Spark. How does that affect the dynamics? Like I think in the past we've talked about risks to having stable coins that are on Bitcoin, because then whoever issued the stable coin gets to pick forks and might be under regulatory pressure to pick forks. Is that the case if we were to have USDB get really large on Spark, would USDB be creating similar risk for Bitcoin?
I think it would be also need to develop like smart contracts and lending and financial services that have that stablecoin baked in. That's where the risk comes with Ethereum. You have all these smart contracts with USDC baked into it. So if there's a fork and tons of people have tons of money locked up in these contracts, and then Circle says, I support fork A, not fork B, like you're going to follow suit on fork A because you want your money to be, you want $1 for every dollar you have, not $0 for every dollar you have. So there'd also need to be like these financial services, smart contracts.
I have a question, and I'm not sure unless I'm thinking this in real time of where value is going to accrue. Because I think we've talked a lot about stable coins over several episodes now. And if you want to enter into this business, there's two ways you can do this. I see. You can either like issue your own stable coin. There's three. You can issue a chain or some payment rail for a stable coin, or you could do both. And a question that I have is like, it seems like so far all the value has accrued toward the internal ledger, the issuer, Tether, right? Because Tether can say, well, fuck it, we're going to burn it off of Tron and move it over to, Solana or Arbitrum or whatever is in vogue. And so in that sense, it's almost kind of like, well, what value is there on working on the payment rail? I don't think this is true, but I'm just.
There's also bridges.
And the bridges between them, the market makers.
And bridges could be where the value accrues.
Yeah.
If the bridges can create a seamless user experience, get the economics right, and get the regulatory picture right, then all of a sudden, who cares? Then I don't care which. I have dollars, you have dollars.
Right.
The underlying issuer we don't even really care about. And if we get to that stage, then you're not going to have winner take all, and Tether won't be king.
The exchange makes all the money.
And the bridge exchange, whatever, that's where the money will be made.
But what do you guys think of those three options? So the issuer is the banking model where you're basically making money off the treasuries. The bridge is the exchange in a multi-coin world. And then there's the owning the payment rail itself. What is your intuition on where the value accrues?
I don't have like strong views on it. But I think, we talked before in the show, I'm skeptical of winner take all by the issuer. So, but I'm also not really, we talked last show about it being kind of a total mess. Like all these, like Stripe will probably be successful with their stuff, but like still kind of a tiny portion of the overall.
Right.
It just seems like there's going to be dozens of very strong players entering, and each will have some level of success, but none of them are interoperable.
Yeah, there's no way audience.
And then the bridges will like kind of make it better, but not fully.
Yeah,
it's just not.
The bridge has to agree to both, and like audience may be like, I'm not going to play in even with this bridge or whatever.
So I think it's just going to be a mess over the next 5 to 10 years.
And of course, our TLDR takeaway was it all comes back to Bitcoin. But what's your intuition, DK? Where do you think the opportunity is?
Yeah, I think my brain's a little fried on this. So I don't know that I'm seeing
I thought you were going to give us the alpha,
all the pieces super clearly. But something at the point of bridging between one another, kind of commoditizing these things that are like everything's basically a commodity here. It's like kind of a USD type equivalent thing in digital. So like, are people going to have huge differentiated networks? I think the answer is no. And so it's more just like the more that you have bridges exist, almost everything is encouraged to flow through there to try to get more market share for themselves. But ultimately the bridges are kind of the pinch point. So despite my brain being fried, I think if I had to commit to an answer right now, I'd say whoever aggregates and commoditizes stablecoins feels like a place that would naturally accrue value.
I mean, just to,
which is like the bridge,
Yeah. But just to push back on that, because I know we've had debates over network effects and like if it's going to be winner take all or winner take most. But like one thing I actually disagree with though is this idea that it's a commodity. I don't think it's a commodity at all. Like
that a USD
that's
is
right.
not a commodity.
Yeah, because think about it. It's like they may call everything, but this is why things like Visa exist in the first place, right? It's like, JP Morgan dollar. Like again, if you go back and I'm going to reshill Alan's sort of stablecoin
Farrington, yeah.
thesis or whatever. It's excellent. I mean, he made this point as well. It's like, but basically, and I think Artur said this with us in an email thread. What we're going to watch free banking. And we haven't seen free bankings for 150 years. And we certainly haven't seen in the age of the internet. And so, part of the socialized risk and insurance that our system has today is trying to make every dollar the same. And so, but that's not the way it works, right? Like JP Morgan may say, I trust Wells Fargo way more than I trust Bank of America, because I know over at Bank of America, like in The Big Short, they're sitting here giving, whatever Miami waitresses five houses or whatever loans, and their dollar's not good. But the whole system is sort of insured by the backstop that is the Federal Reserve, which eventually is just diluting all the normal people. But in this new world, if it's truly free banking and it's probably going to end up being Bitcoin backed, then if I believe, or Tether as an example is able to show, no, I've got the backing plus surplus, then I totally see a world where the Tether dollar trades at a different price than Muppet dollar or whatever, where I'm well, I don't know what their backings are. And yes, the interoperability via Lightning to be able to get in and out of those things instantly, that matters too a lot. And maybe I'm just thinking of this live, on a long enough time horizon, you're all right. The exchange wins, because if you can get in and out of something instantly, who cares? But in the meantime, there's going to be probably a long period before people just store everything in Bitcoin, and they're going to hold dollars. And maybe it's even the Bitcoin.
People are not going to want to hold Muppet dollars if they don't have any trust in that entity.
But that's my point. And so where does the value accrue then? Well, it accrues to whatever bank they trust. And so if Tether can
Max Webster dollars, are they Muppet dollars? Or are they JP Morgan dollars? Well, nobody has them. And how are you going to get people to want to have them?
Well, if they're all interoperable with Lightning, then but
they can exist. But if nobody uses it, what does it matter?
Well, because if I'm paying a Lightning invoice, or I'm paying as long as they're all connected to the internet, I don't think that's going to be a challenge, because then you need banks that still hook into each of those coins to the swap. Although maybe we can find a way to do that trustlessly. But I think my broader point is assume that even for the Bitcoiners, let's say you're a business, you hold some amount of your cash in dollars just because I have to make payroll next month, and Bitcoin is going to be volatile for at least the next decade or so while it finishes its monetization process. I actually do think that being the bank that issues the coin, if you can get people to trust you the most, that's probably still the best business model in the short term, and maybe the exchanges in the long run.
Hey guys, we're running out of time, and I feel remiss that we didn't
talk about anything else.
We didn't know about this, but we didn't properly motivate Spark really, in the sense that I said I wanted to talk about user experience. So if you look at the past 10 years, people's experience with wallets, you typically need to, there's an onboarding process. The typical thing is I'm new to Bitcoin. My first touch point is I need to obtain it. I need to buy it. And then you need to KYC, the passports, and there's lots of friction.
Retinal scan.
But I want to get into Bitcoin, so I'll go through the friction to get the Bitcoin, and then I'm KYC. So that'll continue, I think. But I think moving forward, we're going to see new first touch points with people with Bitcoin. We have a little taste of that with Stacker News and Nostr,
Fountain,
where you get and Fountain, where you get zapped and you receive a tiny amount of Bitcoin. So so where there's applications that you're using it, you don't download. You're not your mindset is not oh, I'm going to install a Bitcoin wallet. It's I'm installing an application that has value to me beyond a wallet. And oh, by the way, an artifact of this application is that either the application itself, I earned Bitcoin through it, or other users of the system, I earn Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And in that case, you're typically receiving a tiny amount of Bitcoin. And so if you're presented with, if your wallet is KYC'd, then that is an enormous amount of friction. If you're a new user to Bitcoin, your first touch point is receiving just a tiny amount of Bitcoin. You're not gonna go get your passport, upload it, type in all this information. But instead, one thing that the biggest excitement I had when I first used Boardwalk Cash was, which is a eCash wallet, was it Max could send me a link.
Yeah.
I click on the link, one step, and boom, I'm looking. I have a wallet. I have money in my wallet that Max sent me, and it can be a tiny amount. Beautiful experience. And so you can imagine that being integrated in all kinds of applications, and it's like a one-click experience, and that's your onboarding process. So what Spark, as well as Lexi, which we've talked about in the show before, it's a Lightning wallet. What both of those do is it also introduces that one-click onboarding experience. And whether it's eCash or Lexi or Spark, there's no KYC. So it's this one-click experience. Unlike eCash, though, LightSpark is a well-funded entity behind it, and like you can be confident that they're going to be around in 6 months,
Right.
in a year, 2 years, 3 years. They're still going to be there. So a wallet that has money in it is still going to be around in 3 years. Much higher confidence than a cashew mint today, which I have no confidence that any cashew mint I use today is going to be around in 3 years, let alone 3 months.
3 days. Yeah.
So that's like a growing pain for eCash right now. And that's where like Lexi and LightSpark have a big edge, I think.
Yeah,
and so to me, that's the motivating factor, is that you have a reliable system that allows this no KYC beautiful onboarding experience for users for wallets. And this ties back into something we've talked about over and over again in the show, which is like vibe coding is going to lead to hundreds of thousands of creators or millions of creators, millions of apps, most of which will suck, but like because of law of large numbers, there'll be lots of compelling applications created. Kind of like DK's pointed out before, they don't have to be Bitcoin centric or Bitcoin wallets. They can just be like super cool applications that happen to have Bitcoin payments woven into them. I think we're going to see that explosion. Now we have the technology enabling that, and it'll be these totally new ways to onboard people onto Bitcoin, and they don't have to be buying Bitcoin, and they don't have to KYC to start using Bitcoin. So that to me is what's super exciting about this.
I agree. And I would say even one step further, I don't know about this on Spark, I need to go deeper, but with what I was talking about with Dustin on eCash, micropayments too. Like small payments are what you're talking about. Like, okay, I got a couple of dollars or whatever I found, but like imagine agents spinning up a wallet and it's like they receive like whatever, like a fraction of a penny. That's also gonna be big.
Yeah. And AI agents as well.
Yeah.
Again, AI agents are not going to like, have their passport.
They can't.
And go through banking forms. Right. So that's another example of what'll be unlocked with this, I think.
I was just talking to an AI scientist this past week, and who's not super deep on Bitcoin, but he was asking me a lot of smart questions about it and kind of trying to sort of challenge the assumptions or get more clarity on where the use cases are. And he seemed to find the idea of AI agents pretty compelling as an initial use case for Bitcoin. But I was explaining to him how I thought that the missing piece was that we don't have like a kind of a hardware substrate that can be paid for in Bitcoin, because I think we've talked before about how to have an autonomous AI agent running its own software business that it gets paid in Bitcoin. It still needs to be able to sort of pay for its own infrastructure to exist.
Need GPUs in Bitcoin.
Yeah. Or even just a CPU. There's like an AWS server that can run. There's a lot of businesses that work really well with no GPUs that could generate tens of millions of dollars, and an AI agent could build its own business like that, and it would need Bitcoin for that. But I think we've always talked, both offline and on the show, I think, about sort of who's building that layer. And it struck me that doesn't even need to be a hardware layer. Somebody could build a software layer, like a virtual machine.
Yeah.
That maybe like I run a virtual machine and I pay AWS, I pay Amazon with my own credit card, but I run that and let people launch that. And that thing itself can accept Bitcoin payments. And then I end up having the wallet that receives those Bitcoin payments to operate that virtual machine. And then I pay Amazon. So I think you don't even need, I was imagining you kind of need to own the hardware and run a data center, all that. You actually don't even need that. You can, through this conversation, at least it surfaced to me that you could run a virtualization layer and be sort of the bridge to accept the payments. And then you can sort of abstract that last bit away later, once you sort of have product market fit, you've proven that there are agents that people build that run and are useful.
I love it. People should be exploring that right now. And I think that's kind of what Artur is getting at a little bit. So maybe him, maybe someone else, but really, really good idea.
So glad we covered Spark in depth. Hopefully you guys understand it better. Future episode though, let's compare it to other solutions as well for wallets. As I mentioned, there's a lot of trade-offs with each of them.
Yeah. Beautiful.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Till next time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Later.